Annual Meeting. I'd like to introduce the players, and then they can come and tell you a little bit more about what they're all about. I'll start with Laura, who's been sitting over there patiently in her Betsy best portrayal pose. Laura Garlow is a senior at Maple River High School, plans to attend Southwest Minnesota State University to study elementary education. Laura has been involved with BECHS since she started Young Historians as a third grader. Hard to believe it's that long ago, but she's been around for a long time with us, for somebody as young as she is. Laura helps with Young Historians, story time at the Hubbard House, and many other activities. And she's not busy at school doing all kinds of things. But also, Julie Schrader is the author and publisher of Hart, Lovelace's Deep Valley, Discover Deep Valley, and the History of the Red Jacket Valley. She recently edited and published collected stories of Hart, Lovelace, and the Lost Lovelace. She established Minnesota Heritage Publishing in 2001. As the former executive director of the Betsy-Tacy Society, she was involved in the restoration of the Betsy-Tacy houses. These houses were designated National Literary Landmarks in 2010. Julie is a longtime member and volunteer with the Blue Earth County Historical Society. And with her today is Jessica Potter, Blue Earth County Historical Society's executive director. She's been with BECHS since 2001 when she started as the curator, archivist, and moved into the role of director in 2005. So they will now present Hart, Lovelace's Front Street.
Well, we welcome you all today to the program. Julie and I had the honor of making this presentation at the Hart, Lovelace, was it Hart, Lovelace?
The Betsy-Tacy.
The Betsy-Tacy convention in July. And we thought it was appropriate to present at the annual meeting this year, kind of as a two-part aspect of it. One being that we've opened our Front Street exhibit, which when I have throw in my little things that are not Hart, Lovelace related, you can show that I'm still pretty obsessed with Front Street. And then the other part is that March is Women's History Month, if you're not familiar with that, and having Maud's collected stories is a fantastic example of how her version of history, how her recollections have been put into literary works. And so we're honoring Women's History Month as well as taking another look at Front Street, which we're so proud of. So that's the plan for today. Hart, Lovelace's Front Street, taking a look at then from approximately 1892 to 1910 to the present.
To find the deep valley of the Betsy-Tacy stories in this bustling modern Mankato is not easy. You must wipe out changes, time is broad, and bring back those horse and buggy days. Hart, Lovelace, 1961.
Oh, so let's go back. Sure.
Let's take a walk down Front Street as seen through the eyes of a young Hart and told by Betsy.
This is a view of South Front Street in 1908, showing the single-wire trolley streetcar. Prior to that streetcar that ran down Front Street, there was a horse-drawn trolley. We have some incredible images of both of those trolley systems that run along Front Street as a major mode of transportation at the turn of the century.
Parallel with Broad Street to the right were other streets rising one above another on the bluff. Parallel with Broad Street to the left was 2nd Street, with more houses, churches, livery stables, and the Opera House. Beyond that, Front Street lay along the river, but the river could not be seen except in glimpses between stores and shops, the depot, the big mill, and Mr. Melbourne Poppy's splendid Melbourne Hotel.
Thomas Sava built his hotel in 1889 on the corner of the 100 block of South Front Street. After his death in 1893, his son Clarence operated the hotel. You'll notice that we have fictional names given in parentheses and in italics on the slides as we go along.
Mr. Poppy owns the Melbourne Hotel and runs the Opera House. The Poppys were always models of elegance. They were city people. They had come from Minneapolis, and no one in town knew them very well. They lived in the hotel. Mrs. Poppy did not keep house as the other women in Deep Valley did. Blonde and radiant, she was said to look like the famous beauty and actress Lillian Russell, except she was stouter, of course. Before her marriage, she had been an actress herself. She and her husband went to the Twin Cities often to see plays, but they saw plays in Deep Valley too. When Mr. Poppy built the Opera House, he had 2 special seats made for Mrs. Poppy and himself. Extra wide, extra deep, and extra comfortable, designed for extra stout people. We went through the swinging door into the lobby. It smelled of cigars and the fat red leather chairs. At the top of the stairs stretched the hotel dining room. It was 2 stories high and overlooked the river. Here, Deep Valley gave its fashionable parties, its dances and cotillions, with an orchestra playing behind potted palms, and those guests who did not care to dance amusing themselves with whist and euchre in the luxurious parlors.
As a side note for myself, anyone that's worked with me on the Front Street project, one of my dreams of Front Street is to stand in the lobby of the Sava Hotel. And through these incredible images, we're able to do that. And in the exhibit upstairs, you're literally able to stand in the lobby of the Sava Hotel. Throughout this presentation, the plan for me is to show you the today. Here is a photograph of the 100 block of South Front Street, where the Sava Hotel you can see on the right, and that is looking south on Front Street. And the photo below is a photo of what it is today. In 1978, the Sava Hotel was raised, and the what we know of today, the City Center Hotel or the Holiday Inn, was built in 1980. This was the point in time where Front Street was officially disconnected from the south end to the north end. You no longer could make that complete track all the way down. So this is kind of that moment in time where you'd be able to see blocks and blocks, and now we have a roadblock.
The Corner Cafe was located directly across the street from the Sava Hotel.
And who is Charlie? My mother asked while I slipped into a chair and stared with fascinated eyes. My beau, Anna answered, a bartender down at the Corner Cafe.
Marlon Hair Jewelry Store was established in 1870 by Stuart Martin. In 1892, his nephew, Frank Hair, became co-owner. The business was located on Front Street until Urban Renewal forced it to move to Jackson Street in 1976. The store closed in 1990.
My mother told us what she wanted for Christmas. It's in Dodd and Store's window, she said. Just what I want for the front parlor window, a big brass bowl.
Ma doesn't name the Front Street hardware store she refers to in Betsy-Tacy Go Downtown, but there are 2 possibilities, Bluesdorf and Son and J.A. Lewis and Son.
We raced to the hardware store. Sure enough, there was a horseless carriage on display there. We inspected it from every angle, and the curly-haired hardware store man let us sit in it for a while. He was very obliging. While we were in the store, we looked at skates and bicycles.
The toy shop that Maud writes about in Betsy-Tacy Go Downtown was fictional. The book takes place in 1904, and Mankato didn't have a toy shop then as described. The newspaper ads for Stewart and Holmes and Warwick bookstores during the Christmas season featured toys, games, and dolls. In 1907, the New York 5 and 10 cent store opened and carried a general mercantile stock, including toys, candy, and Christmas ornaments.
The toy shop was what we had all been waiting for. We'd been holding it off in order to have it still ahead of us. But the time for it had come at last. At the toy shop, it was difficult to choose. In blissful indecision, we circled the table of dolls. Yellow-haired dolls with blue dresses, black-haired dolls with pink dresses, baby dolls, boy dolls, black dolls. When we were through with the dolls, we began on the other toys. Trains of cars, jumping jacks, woolly animals on wheels. I turned and led the way to the far end of the store. There, on a long table, Christmas tree ornaments were set up for sale. There were boxes and boxes full of them, the colors mingling in bewildering iridescence. There were large, fragile balls of vivid hues. There were gold and silver balls. There were tinsel angels, shining harps and trumpets, gleaming stars. We gave ourselves then with abandon to the sweet delight of choosing. It was almost pain to choose. Each fragile bauble was gayer, more enchanting than the last. And now we were not just choosing, we were buying. What each of us chose, she would take home. She would see it on the Christmas tree. She would see it year after year, if she were lucky and it did not break. We walked around and around the table, touching softly with mittened hands. At last, I chose a large red ball. Tacy chose an angel. Tib chose a rosy Santa Claus. Winona chose a silver trumpet. We yielded their duns, and the lady with the eyeglasses wrapped up 4 packages.
As we progress down Front Street, down South Front Street, we're in that 100 block. The photos that you see at the bottom are a look at the pedestrian walkway that runs between the City Center Hotel and the Verizon Wireless Center. The photo at the top on the left is a later photograph of the Sava Hotel. The building next to it, you can see remnants of that building, and the photo below, that building is still standing. And then across the street, you can see the Conrad Furs building. That's a building that is still standing today. And everybody's walking down memory lane. I love it. As we move down to the 200 block, again, it's that look of the pedestrian walkway and what you would have seen if you were on Front Street prior to urban renewal. You can see looking to the next block down, you can see what is now the Grafe building, what was then the Grafe building as well, kind of towering over. But you can see in the forefront of the 200 block, both sides of it, the building that still stands today that anchors us to that block is the bank building that has been encompassed into the City Center, or into the Midwest Verizon Wireless Center. Sorry. So that's a building that we've been able to salvage and save, but we've really lost that reconnection to Front Street. If you're not familiar with why that building's there, you've lost that connection.
Gottlieb Schmidt established his saddle and harness shop on Front Street in 1861. Notice the white wooden horse in the doorway?
We went next door to the harness and saddle maker shop. There was a tall wooden horse standing in the window. It was almost 7 feet tall, dapple gray with flashing glass eyes and springy mane and tail. Every year the harness and saddle maker let Tib sit on the horse. He told us if the horseless carriages keep coming to town, he'll have to take that fellow down.
The store's name changed as the business passed from generation to generation. The store evolved as cars replaced horses, saddle and harness sales were replaced with cameras and photograph equipment sales. The store closed in 1986 after 125 years in business. Nyquist Men's Clothing Store was established by John Nyquist in 1887. The store was in business through the 1950s and for many years was considered one of the leading men's stores in southern Minnesota.
As class president, Joe was ex officio member of all committees, so we joined the group which went down to Alquist Clothing Store looking for caps. After much hilarious trying on, the committee decided to recommend skull caps made up of the class colors of violet and gray.
There were 2 jewelry stores on South Front Street that Maud may have been referring to at Betsy-Tacy Go Downtown. Taylor Jewelry and W.R. Crandall's. Carlos Taylor established his store in 1891, and after Taylor's death in 1905, William Palmer bought the business.
We hurried to the jewelry store. The clerks there weren't very helpful, however. They wouldn't let us try on the diamond rings or necklaces or bracelets. They wouldn't even let us handle the fat gold watches with doves engraved on the sides, which looked so fashionable pinned to a shirtwaist.
John Snow opened his photography studio in 1892. Snow Studio became Hicks Studio in 1960 when Gerald Hicks purchased the business. Hicks Studio closed in 1986 when Gerald retired. John Snow took Maud and Vic's Mankato High School graduation photos in 1910.
We went to Mr. Snow's photographic studio to sit for our class pictures. I had one taken in my shirtwaist wearing my class pin, another in my class day dress, the pale blue embroidered Betsy-Tacy, Julia had sent from Switzerland, we got the proofs, and I saw that the shirtwaist picture I looked just as I really looked, but the Class A picture was dreamingly flattering. We had this picture taken in 1907, just before Bonnie moved away. This is Irma, Carney, Bonnie, Julia, myself, and Winona.
Cook's bookstore was most likely a composite of Stewart and Holmes and Warwick's. Both book and stationery stores were located on South Front Street.
We went to Cook's bookstore. I knew what I was going to choose, Little Men. I got Little Women last year. We went in and said hello to Mr. Cook. His bright eyes looked up sharply under his silky toupee.
The drugstore the girls visited was probably Lamb's drugstore.
We went to the drugstore. We sniffed every kind of perfume in the store. Before we chose, finally, rose and lilac and violet and new mown hay.
There were several department stores on South Front Street. Maud's family shopped at Brett's, so it's most likely the store she describes as a line department store is Brett's.
At the Lion department store, we shopped even more extensively. There were many departments, and we visited them all. The busy clerks paid little attention to us. We wandered happily about. We chose rhinestone side combs, jeweled hat pins, gay pompadour puffs. We chose fluffy collars and belts and pocketbooks. We chose black lace stockings and taffeta petticoats and embroidered corset covers. It was hard to tear ourselves away, but we did so at last.
Again, this is putting in perspective of where we have been and where we are now. Brett's department store, if you are trying to place where that's at today, is encompassed into the Mankato Place Mall. The photograph on the far bottom gives you a wonderful aerial view of what was happening during urban renewal, where they were placing the mall, what buildings they were maintaining as part of the interior of the mall. You can literally see the intersection of the street of not Hickory, not Walnut, or Jackson. I had to run through my head. Jackson Street and Front Street, you can literally see that intersection. The Grave Building, which we talked about before, is still in its original location. The Brett's Building is still in its original location with the mall surrounding it. And the sidewalk, which runs to the entrance of the mall, is former Front Street.
Even though Maud was likely describing Brett's when she writes about visits to the department store, there's little doubt that Richards was the inspiration for her choice of the fictional name, Lion's Department Store. It's not shown in this picture, but a bronze lion stood in front of the store, and its advertising slogan was the sign of the golden lion.
September lay upon Front Street in pale golden light. Horses were drowsing at hitching rings and poles. In front of the Lion department store, a bronze lion stood guard over a drinking trough.
Maud's father, Thomas Hart, opened his retail boot and shoe store at South Front Street in 1894.
I loved visiting the store, riding the movable ladders from which he took boxes from the highest shelves, helping myself to the advertising tablets and talking to customers.
Shown here are Hart's shoe store ads from the Mankato Free Press in 1894 and 1899. Tom Hart was elected Loworth County Treasurer in 1904 and then sold his retail shoe business to Lee Wood. The store then became Wood and Sterling. Heinz Palace Restaurant was owned by Ferdinand Heinz and was referred to as the largest and most important restaurant and bakery in the city in the early 1900s.
Mrs. Mueller took us across the street to Heinz Restaurant, and we had a dish of ice cream. It was vanilla ice cream, and we had vanilla wafers with it.
Although Austin's shoe store is not mentioned in the Betsy-Tacy books, it's important because it was owned and operated by Tom Hart's stepfather-in-law, Chauncey Austin. Hart was a traveling shoe salesman for Austin until 1894 when he opened his own shoe store. Austin sold his business in 1897 and moved to California. When William Crandall purchased the building at 418 South Front Street from Chauncey Austin in 1901, Crandall's was a three-generation business and remained in this building until closing in 1991. And the first theater in Mankato was the Majestic. It opened on Front Street in 1906.
The Majestic Theatre, now, according to the sign, a high-class place of amusement with up-to-date moving picture entertainment, especially for ladies and children, had just been a short time before an ordinary Front Street store. Moving picture entertainment had only been a rumor emanating from nearby St. Paul and Minneapolis. There, travelers said pictures moved on the screen. Deep Valley had seen them move only on Nickelodeons, small boxes into which one dropped a nickel and peeps at jerky horse races, prize fights, or dancing girls. Then talk of a moving picture called The Great Train Robbery rolled over the country like a tidal wave. In Deep Valley, as in thousands of other towns, a storefront was painted red and yellow, a screen was put up inside, a projection machine, a piano, and rows of chairs were moved in. The first program was The Great Train Robbery, and my father took our family to see it. Today the picture was a fantasy called The Astronomer's Dream. That was the kind I liked the best. I sat on a hard chair in the dim, stuffy show house and watched the flickering scenes in enchanted silence.
The grocery stores that were located near Hart's shoe store were Draper and Pedersen, which is pictured here, and Hansen and Nelson. The fictional Schultes may have been based on these stores.
Tib wanted to get our jawbreakers first, so we went to the Schultes grocery store and bought a nickel's worth of jawbreakers.
As we finish walking along South Front Street to see where we've reconnected, in the 400 block of South Front, we still have many of the buildings remaining, and you're lucky, we're still very fortunate to be able to see that. The pedestrian walkway that's in the center of this area was Front Street, so there's a point where we can literally stand again on Front Street. The Cherry Street ramp is taking its spot where many buildings once stood. And then once we enter into the 500 block of South Front, we've once again reconnected to Front Street. We, due to urban renewal, we've lost 7 city blocks of Front Street. And through mod stories and through photographs, we're able to recreate that. Here's that point where we reconnect to Front Street at the 500 block. The buildings that are there, the buildings that have gone, and new ones are in its place.
Patrick Kenny, or Mr. Kelly, Tacy's father, worked for the Singer Sewing Machine Company in Minneapolis. He was transferred to the Mankato store in 1897, where he worked until 1911.
Oh my, look at the time. I need to get on to Papa's store so I can get a ride home in the buggy with Papa and Old Meg.
Maud's books give us a picture of what it was like to live in Mankato at the turn of the 20th century. Her stories draw us in, and we feel what it was like to live in this period of history. Even though she's writing about Mankato's history, it could have been life in any small town in America. How fortunate Mankato is to have the gift of history that Maud left us. Later in life, Maud commented that Mankato is a wonderful town to grow up in. She felt she had the best childhood, and she always loved Mankato.
To finish up and remind you, the Blue Earth County Historical Society has 2 locations. The Heritage Center here. We encourage you to take an opportunity to go upstairs and check out the new Front Street exhibit, as well as the enhanced Maud Hart Lovelace exhibit in the museum. And then the R.D. Hubbard House, which is on the corner of Broad Street and Warren Street. The house represents life at night in 1905, which was the same time period as Maud is writing many of her stories. You can see that juxtaposition of how 2 families are growing up in Mankato, one with wealth and one is a working class family. And we would like to express our appreciation to Sharon Sens with Old Town Antiques. Thanks to her, we had our little parlor seats with Julie raided the store and was able to get those for us. So we thank Sharon Sens for letting us borrow those. So now you all should go to Old Town Antiques and tell her thank you. And then we want to make sure that we acknowledge Laura Garlow as Betsy. We had Alex Oldenburg, who is kind of the sidekick to Laura, which is appropriately the sidekick to Betsy and Tacy. Couldn't be here today, so Laura carried the show for us. And just from my own bottom of my own heart, Laura is a very special young lady who has done an incredible amount of work for this organization, and I was so happy that she got to be part of this annual meeting before she graduates and goes off to college and does great things in Marshall. But Laura has been a really incredible young lady in this organization, and I think that shows the depth of this organization, that a young lady is giving her Sundays to talk about history and be excited about history. And we have all the way to our beautiful Inella Burns in the front seat. We have every age. We have Ambry in the back, who spends a lot of time learning about history and hanging out at the Hubbard House. And we have everybody in between. And I think that's what makes this organization so special. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you all for being part of this organization. Sidekick today, a wealth of information. She always corrects me when I get the Hart, Lovelace versus Betsy-Tacy thing confused. But Julie Schrader is an incredible wealth of information on this topic. She has two spectacular books. I'm kind of biased toward the little one. But she has two spectacular books. We carry all of her books in our gift shop. So when you're buying one of her books here, you're also making a donation to this organization. So please support Julie's books, and I know she's willing to sign copies if you want to give some for gifts. So I thank Julie for being here today as well. And one last thing to finish up, as part of a project that is history and has to do with the Lincoln Park neighborhood, which is Hart Lovelace's stomping grounds. There is a major effort to put the fountain back in place, and there is a wonderful event that's happening in a few weeks. And I wanted to invite Bryce Densel to come forward and tell you about that event and tell you